This video is long, but simple. It's an in-depth, step-by-step tutorial that shows you exactly how to build an incredible booking app from scratch on a no-code platform called Glide. This is the sort of app you can charge thousands of dollars for. So if you can build this, which I believe you can, you're well on your way to becoming a Glide expert. Now, when I say we're going deep, I mean column by column, component by component deep. And when we're done, you'll have a fully functioning booking app that allows you to define business trading hours, customize employee shifts and availability, allocate services to specific employees, set service durations, incorporate buffer times between appointments, prevent double bookings, adjust time intervals between appointment slots, enable both managers and visitors to make bookings, and much, much more. Now, if you're thinking this sounds complex, you can rest easy because I've got you covered. I've created the ultimate cheat sheet that's going to be your guiding star as you build out this app. It lists out every single column you need, including the settings of each column. So if you want that, head to Loqode School and sign up for free. The link is in the description of this video, and the cheat sheet will be listed as a resource under this lesson in the classroom. And one last thing. Sprinkled throughout this tutorial are countless insider tips, strategies, hacks, and techniques that will take your app building skills to the next level. So grab a coffee, get comfy, stay focused, and let's build this app together. And one last thing. Some of this was filmed at night, so it's a bit ASMR-y, but you'll get used to it. Alright, so what we have here is an application that has been fully cleaned out. We only have the users table. There's nothing on the front end, there's just a home page. You need at least one custom page. And there are no actions. And in the settings, we've done top, light, and neutral. Now we're going to do the front end after we've built out the back end. So without further ado, let's jump into the back end. So in the users table, if you haven't done it already, you want to add a row ID column. To do this, you select basic and then row ID. Now, once we've added that, what we want to do is start grouping things into folders. We want to group our columns into nicely named and grouped folders. And so to do that, all you need to do is add the folder name and then a / and then the name of the column. So in this case, our folder is called user, and then we have username. And so what we're going to do is add user / before the email, the photo, and the role. And what this does is it groups it all into one folder, and this makes it much easier to find what we're looking for on the front end. So now that we've done this, let's actually jump into the first table. So we're going to add a new table. It's going to be our Glide table, and this is going to be our our bookings table. This is where all the bookings are going to be registered. So we can add a little calendar emoji if we want, and we can call this bookings, and let's jump into it. So first thing, always, we're going to add basic row ID. Okay, then we're going to add, we can actually delete this column, we don't need it. The next thing we're going to add is basic date and time. This is going to be booking / date. It's not going to be user specific. We're going to select date only. The format's going to be long, and we're going to leave it to respect time zones. Once that's done, we're going to add client / name. This is just a text column. Done. Then we're going to add client / phone number. In this case, we can do basic phone number. It's not going to be user specific, so we click done. Let's add a column to the right, and this is going to be client / email. We can make this a basic email column. Click done, and we're good to go. Now we want to start adding some Barber details, right? So we need to store and look up some of the details related to the Barber. So this is going to be Barber /ID, just a text column. Then we're going to do service /ID. So who's the Barber and what service are they going to provide in this booking? So we've got client details, we've got some barber details. Then what we're going to do is add service/name. So we've got the ID, but what's the actual name of the service? Now we're going to make this a static field, because if at any point we change the name of the service, we don't really want to change any historical bookings. We want to make sure that the original name for the service that we provided is maintained. And so we can just have it as a static text column. From there, we're going to add a column to the right, and this is going to be service/duration. Now, again, this is going to be a static column, because if at any point we change the duration of the service that we're providing for this particular booking, we don't want to change historical stuff. So we want to leave it as is. This is going to be a number. It's going to be precision, just an integer, not a decimal. We're going to remove any group separators. And after this, we're just going to add a space and then minutes. So this will be like 15 minutes. So it makes it clear when you're looking through it. Then we need to do one last thing, and this is going to be Timeslot/start. And this is going to be a number column, and we're going to make it an integer, and we don't need a separator, and we're going to click done. Now this is the bookings table done for now in terms of basic columns. All right, so now that we've added the bookings table, the next table we're going to add is the booking form. And this is going to act as the reusable form that we can use throughout the app. Now, what we can do is just add the same emoji just so it resembles some sort of grouping in terms of tables. And this is going to be booking form. Now, first thing we do, as always, is add the row ID. Now we can delete this name column, and then we can add the first column, which is going to be a date and time column. We're going to call this booking/date. We're going to make sure that it's user specific. Now the reason we want to make it user specific is because if I'm editing the form, or I'm filling out the form, and I select a date, everyone else using the form, if it's not user specific, is going to see the date that I selected, and it's going to change whatever value they had input. So we want to make sure that majority of the fields in the booking form are user specific. So they're all individual to each person filling out the form. We're going to select date only. We're going to make it long, and then we're going to press done. And then the next one we want to add is the client/name, and we want to do the same thing. We want to make it user specific. Once we've added the client name, we're going to add the client phone number. And we can call this client/phone number. Again, user specific. Then we're going to add a last one, and I'm going to leave it as text. You can select the email column here. However, I don't like the way that it tries to validate the email as you're typing. And so I'm just going to leave it as a text column. And we're going to call this one client/email. Again, it's going to be user specific. So now that we've added those, we want to add some static columns, and these are going to be called variables. And the first variable is going to be the booking interval. And this is how long between bookings do we want our intervals to be. So is this going to be like 8, 8:15, 8:30, 8:45, or is it going to be 8, 9, 10? What's that gap? And this is basically going to give us the time slots that they can pick from. So in this case, the booking interval is going to be a number. We're going to leave it as an integer. We're going to not use a group selector, and we can add minutes here just to help us recognize what it actually is. Now this one we don't want to make user specific because we want to set it and forget it basically. So we can do that. And in fact, what we can do now is input the value of 15 minutes. So our bookings will be incremented by 15 minutes. Then what we can do is actually just duplicate this, and instead of calling it booking interval, we want to call it booking buffer. And this is, once an appointment is booked, how soon can another appointment be booked after that booking. So if you have a booking that ends at 8:30, if the buffer is 0, the next person can book from 8:30 onwards. If the buffer is 15 minutes, the next person can only book from 8:45 onwards. So we're going to leave this actually exactly the same. It's not going to be user specific because this is another one of those set and forget sort of things. So we've got the booking buffer. Then what we want to do is add a service table, service folder, and this is going to be the service that they have selected on the front end. So what we're going to do now is jump back into the user specific columns, because if someone selects a service, that's their service that they've selected. We don't want it to change the values for other people. So we've got the service selected. Then we're going to add the barber selected. This is again just going to be a text column. We're going to make it user specific. Then we're going to add another column, and this is going to be Timeslots / selected. Again, it's going to be user specific, and we can leave this actually as a text column as well. And so we've got one last thing to add, and this is going to be form / page. What page are they on in the multi-step form? Is it page 1 where they're selecting various details? Is it page 2 where they're going to be entering their contact details? Or is it page 3 where we're going to show a summary of the booking before they proceed? In this case, we also want it to be user specific, because if I click next page, I don't want to be changing the page that someone else is viewing. So we make it user specific, and this one is going to be a number. It's going to be an integer. We don't need a group separator, and we don't need any units. And that's it. Let's move on to the next table. All right, so let's add the Barbers table. And what we're going to do here is add a new glide table. And I'm going to add a little barber emoji here, and I'm going to call this Barbers. So, you know the drill. Let's add the row ID. Then we can delete this. And the reason I delete this is because in various other projects, this, when you're calling the API, has name instead of a unique ID. And so I want it to actually be a unique ID. Sometimes it doesn't delete when I delete it, but this is something that's unavoidable. But let's just add the next column, which is going to be barber / name. And you can see it deleted there in the background as I was doing that. So we've got barber name. That's all we need to do. Beautiful. Let's add another column. And this is going to be barber / image. So we're going to have an image of the barber. Then we're going to add another column. And this is going to be services / list. And this is just a text column. Then we're going to have availability, if I can spell it. And this is going to be, are they available? Oh my gosh. Bear with my spelling, please. Are they available? There we go. We got there. No, we didn't. Okay, now we did. So this is just going to be a Boolean column. And basically we can check or uncheck if the barber is available. And this will basically enable or disable them on the front end for people to book. So we click done. Then what we want to do is add a column to the right. And this is going to be availability. Oh my gosh. Autocorrect has ruined my ability to spell. So this is going to be availability, and then this is going to be Monday. And we're just going to leave it as some text. And what we can do is just duplicate this for Tuesday. We can duplicate it for Wednesday. We can duplicate it for Thursday. Friday. Friday. Duplicate for Saturday. Duplicate it for Sunday. And what this is going to do is actually store the IDs of the time slots that this particular barber is available on for each day. And that's all we're doing for the barber table for now. All right, so now it's time to add the services table. So let's add a new glide table. And this is going to be a list of all the services that are provided by the barbers. So we can add another little scissor emoji, and this is going to be services. You know the drill. Add the row ID. We can delete this name column. And the first one we're going to add is a text column, and this is going to be service/name. That's all we need to do for now. Then we're going to add another column, and it's going to be service/duration. It's going to be a number column. It's not going to be user specific. We don't need it as a decimal. We don't need a group separator, but what we will do is just add a unit, so it makes it easier to see what's going on. So then what we want to do is add the next column, which is going to be this service/image. And this is just an image that represents the service, basically. So that's it for the services table for now. All right, so now we're going to add the time off table, and this is going to allow people to basically block out times either for an individual barber or for the store in general. So what we want to do is add the new table. Then we can add a little disabled emoji, and we can call this table time off. We're going to add a row ID. We're going to delete the name column. We're going to add an event/name. We're going to add an event/start. It's going to be date only, long, done. And then we also obviously need an event end. So we're going to duplicate this. And we're going to call this event end, and we can leave everything else the same. There's one last thing we need to do, and this is going to be the barber ID column. And this is where the ID of the barber who this time off segment is related to is going to be stored. And this allows us to basically signify whether it's specific to the barber or it's for the entire store. But for now, that's actually the time off table done. All right, now it's time to add the trading hours table. And this is the hour from and to that the store is going to operate each day. So what we want to do is just add, what can we add? A little maybe alarm clock. And this is going to be trading hours. So as always, we add the row ID. We can delete this name column. We're going to add a day/name. We're going to add a column to the right, and this is going to be a day/start column. It's going to be a number. The precision is going to be 1. We don't need a group separator, and we don't need units. Then what we want to do is just duplicate this, and we can say this is the day end, and that's it. All right, so what we're going to do is now actually add some data, just so that when we're creating the dynamic columns or the computed columns, which is the next section, that they actually have some values to look up. So what we want to do here is add 7 rows for the 7 days of the week, right? And then here, I'm just going to paste some data that I have previously. Now these are the days of the week. I don't know why. Why did that change like that? That's very strange. I don't know if you saw that, but it switched the order. Anyhow, we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We have the start time in minutes. So 5:40, I believe, represents 9 o'clock in the morning in terms of minutes as a multiple of 60. And then these are just various end times. So what we want to do is I'm actually just going to make this all the same. We're going to finish a little bit early on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we're actually going to be closed. So we're going to have no opening time, no close time. We're going to leave that blank. Then what we want to do is in the services, let's just add some services. So we can add 2. And the first one is going to be a basic cut. The second one is going to be a styled cut, not a styled butt. This is going to be 30 minutes in duration. And this one's going to be 60 minutes in duration. And what we can do is just add a stock image, and we can just look up Barbers. And what's a good one for a basic cut? That looks like he's basically cutting hair. And we can do the same again. We can just get a stock image for now and look up Barbers. And maybe we can do this one, looks a bit more fancy. So we've got the services. Then we're going to go to Barbers, and we're just going to add 2 barbers, right? So one is going to be called Bob, and the other's going to be called, let's make it a bit spicier, let's make it Jimbo. So let's add Bob. Now Bob can be, who can Bob be? Where's a picture of Bob? There we go, there's Bob. And we can just add another barber. So who looks like a Jimbo? That's a Jimbo. So now that we've done that, we can actually leave this table for now. We don't need to actually do anything yet. What we do want to do is go to the booking form. Do we actually need to add anything here? No, what we can do is add the booking buffer, which we didn't do before. The rest we can actually leave. That's fine. And the bookings, we don't actually need to add any bookings yet. We can actually just delete this empty row, and we don't want to delete this one, but for the time off, actually we can delete that too for now. And that's it. So now we've got a little bit of dummy data that we can use to actually look up the values. So let's get onto the computed columns. All right, so let's start adding some of the computed columns or the dynamic columns. Now, first thing we want to do is go to the users, and you know what I'm going to do is actually just add a little orb for the admins. Totally unnecessary, but you know how it is. So then we're going to add variables, and the first one is going to be the booking interval. And what we're going to do here is go to the computed column list, and we're going to get a single value. And the value that we're going to get is the first from the booking form variables booking interval, right? So what we're doing is we're pulling in this value from the booking form, and since the users row is available from anywhere in the app, it also means it's available from any other table, because we can actually look up values from the users table. So we want this, it's kind of like a global variable. Then what we're going to do is duplicate it, and we're going to pull in, as you might have guessed, the booking buffer. This is another variable that we want to be present throughout the app. So instead of this, we're going to select variables, booking buffer. The next thing we're going to do is add a template, and this is going to be, this is going to be reusables, and this is going to be minutes. We can add a little arrow to time. Now you saw in the trading hours table that we had values of time in minutes. This little snippet of code is going to convert the minutes into a time, so 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. or something like that. So we're going to make it a computed template. And the reason we're going to do it as a template is because then we can use this code in JavaScript columns in any other table without having to copy and paste the same code over and over. What this also does is if you make an error or you want to make a change or you want to upgrade it, you can make the change to the code here, and everywhere else throughout the app, that change is going to be reflected. So for example, if we're changing 540 minutes into 9 a.m. and the AM is in capitals, if we make a change so we want to see it in lowercase, we can do that, and then everywhere throughout the app, that will be reflected. So what we want to do is I just have some code here. And if you're part of Loqode School, you'll have access to this code. And if you're not part of Loqode School, I don't know what you're doing, get in there. It's an awesome community. And you'll also have access to the cheat sheet that I'm creating for this app and access to all the actual code. Now, you can obviously just look on screen and use some sort of screenshot software if you want, but it's much easier if you just copy and paste. So for this one, that's actually all we need to do. And we're going to do the same thing. And this time, it's not going to be minutes to time. This is going to be date to ID. And the reason we want to do this is because dates can be submitted in a number of different ways. It can be month first or day first or year first or whatever it is. And so what we want to do is have a little piece of code that can get any date and put it into one simplified, uniform, universal ID that we can then use to check for double bookings and days off and stuff like that. And so the code we want for that, let me just copy it from off the screen. So the code is going to be that. I'll leave it up for a second so you can copy and paste it. Then what we want to do is add another column, and this is going to be booking form related. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to select a single value, but the value that we're going to be selecting is the booking form whole row. Now the reason we're doing this is because if we wanted to manipulate the values on the booking form, we would have to select the page source as the booking form, which means we can only do that from basically one page. If we import the entire row, which is essentially just the booking form, into the users table, since the users values are accessible from anywhere in the app or any table, we've now created a form that we can access from anywhere in the app. And so this is a really handy feature, basically. Then what we want to do is add a column to the right, and we're going to add another value from the booking form. And this is going to be the selected service. So which service has the user who's filling out the form selected? Now, because this is user specific, this value is going to change for every single user. So we go to computed, we go single value, and we're going to hit the first from the bookings form service selected. So we click done, and that's all we need to do at the moment in terms of computer columns for the users table. All right, so what we're going to do now is actually create a new table, and this is going to be called time slots. And this is where we're going to dynamically create all of the time slots that are selectable by the person who's making the booking on the front end. So we're going to add a new table, and we can add a timer. We can say time slots. I never know if it's one word or two words, but we'll stick with one for now. So let's add the row ID. We can get rid of this name column. And then what we're going to do is basically we need to figure out the row number. So what we can do is add a lookup. The value we're going to look up, or the relation column, is going to be the Timeslots row ID. So we only have one row right now, so it's only going to pull that. And we're going to call this index all. Now what this does, you'll see when I add a new row, it pulls in the next row's row ID. So next to this, we're going to say index And this is going to be the number. And what we want to do here is go to computed, experimental, array, find element index. Now the values of the array is going to be all of the row IDs, and we want to find the row ID of the current row, and basically that'll tell us what the row ID is. And so we can do precision integer 1, we don't need to use a group separator, and we can just press done. Now you see if I add a new row, bang, we got row number 2. The first row is always going to be row 0. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then from there, it's going to basically continue. So let's actually continue adding the next columns. So then we're going to do Timeslot value, and this is going to be a math column. And what we're going to do here is index multiplied by interval. So the index is going to be the row number, and the interval is going to be the user profile, variables, booking interval. So you see why it was so handy to actually import that interval into the users table, because now we can access it from anywhere without having to add an additional column, like another single value column or something like that. And so what we can do there is just leave it like that. We don't need a group separator, and we can, as far as I'm concerned, leave it like that. Then what we want to do is add a column to the right, and this is going to be Timeslot / start. Now this is, again, we're going to use one of those templates that we added to the user table. So in this case, it's going to be computed, experimental, code, JavaScript. So what we want to do, the JavaScript code that we're actually going to run, that's going to convert this number into a time, is going to be that reusable code that we added to the users row. And the value that we want to turn into a time is going to be the Timeslot value. So you can see now we've got 12, 12:15, 12:30, 12:45, because this is essentially midnight. This is 15 minutes past midnight, etc. So what we want to do now is add another column, and this is going to be Timeslot / end. This is going to be another code column, another JavaScript column, but this time we're going to customize that code a little bit. So I've got that code over here. And what we're going to do here, because we're not reusing this, we don't need to add it to the user's profile. This is just a one-off. But what we're going to do is we're going to get the Timeslot value as P1, and then we're going to add the user profile, variables, booking interval, right? So you can see here that this time slot runs from 12 till 12:15. This time slot runs from 12:15 to 12:30, etc. So the next thing we want to do is add another column, and this is going to be Timeslot / name, and it's going to be a template column. And what we want to do here is go start, end. And this is going to allow us to actually see the time slot start and end on the front end in a single string. So I'm going to put start here, I'm going to put end here, and we're going to select time slot start and time slot end. And what we can do is actually drag this over so we can have it nicely organized. So we've got the name of the time slot, the start, the end, and the value in minutes. And so there's a few things we still need to do. So the next thing, we're going to add a column to the right, and this is going to be Timeslot/ID. What we're going to do is add another experimental code JavaScript column, and this time the code is going to be this. And all we're doing here is basically converting the minutes into a decimal. And I'll explain why in a second. But let's do that now. So the reason we are doing this is because this is a number, this is a string. And when we are running queries for this particular time slot value or this particular time, we want to be basically the query requires that we look up strings instead of numbers. So all we're doing is converting this value into basically an ID that represents this time slot. The other thing is that if we were looking up, for example, a time slot with a value that includes the value 0, well, this includes the value 0, so this would be returned. And there's a whole host of other things that basically follow on from this if we don't turn the time value of minutes into a decimal. Now, the reason I like JavaScript is because we can specify how many decimals we want to actually return. Now, you can do this from a number column, but it actually doesn't maintain 4 decimals if the number is a rounded number. So just trust me on this one. This is not redundant. This is actually a feature that is going to save us a lot of headaches in the future. So we still got some more columns. Actually, no, sorry. For this one, that's done. All right, so what we're going to do now is actually add a number of rows to this table so we can actually access those specific time slots. Because it's dynamically set, it means that we need to add basically a fixed amount of rows and then allow it to do its thing. So you can fast forward this bit. All right, so we've added 96 rows, and that represents the 96 time slots that go from midnight to midnight. Now, obviously, we're not going to use all of these, but in the event that someone wants to open the store early, maybe 5, 6 a.m. or close really late, it gives them that flexibility. Now, this is, of course, basically running off the fact that we have 15-minute increments. If you had half-an-hour increments or hourly increments, there would be a lot less rows. But the beauty of this is I wouldn't suggest going below 15-minute intervals. So if 15 minutes is the most intervals or most slots that you have in a day, any other value you set, could be even 20 minutes, so every third of an hour, is going to be contained within this, and it doesn't matter if some of the rows basically have empty sort of values. What we want to do is, just for OCD's sake, I'm going to move these over, and so we have a nice set of basically time slot names as the first column. So that's it. All right, so now that we've added all these time slots, what we're going to do is jump into the trading hours table, and we're going to add a query column. And this is going to be time slots related. What we're going to do is select the query column. The source is going to be time slots. And what we're going to do is add some filters, because we don't want all the time slots. What we want are the time slots where the value is greater or equal to this row's start time. So you can see that 5:40 is pulling back 9 a.m. as the first slot, which is exactly what we want. And then we're going to do and the time slot value is less or equal to this day's end. So basically, we're going to have time slots from 9 a.m. to whatever time this is. And if I can scroll across, we can see that that's 5 p.m. So we've got a 9 to 5 based on these slots. And it's the same for this. And on Sunday, you can see we've got no available slots. So that is the trading hours table done. All right, so now that we've got the trading hours table done, let's jump into the time off table. And we're basically going to add another JavaScript column. And this is going to give us a list of dates that we've blocked out. And this is going to disable any bookings on those dates. So what we want to do is add a new column. And this is going to be another code column. It's going to be JavaScript. And basically, this code, which I'll leave on screen for a little while, is essentially going to give us a list of dates in the format that we want from the start date to the end date. And it's going to return it in that ID. It's like that snippet we added to the user table before. So you can see here that P1 is going to be the event start, and P2 is going to be the event end. And we're going to call this one dates/unavailable. And I spelt it right this time. So what that's going to do, just to show you an example, if I add 7th September 2023 and 10th September 2023, it's going to give us a list of dates in a simple string format that represents all of the days that these are blocking out. So if 10th is when we get back to work, it's going to block the 7th, 8th, and 9th. So that's all this code is doing. And it saves us, again, a lot of time having to add many helper tables or columns or stuff like that. And so, again, the code will be found in Loqode School, but I can show you again just quickly on screen if you want to copy this and pause it. But without further ado, we are going to continue. All right, so now we're going to jump into the services table. So let's jump into that, and we're going to add an if then else column, and this is going to be service/selected. We're going to make it an if then else, and what we're going to say is if the booking form service selected is the row ID of this service, I'm just going to add a little check to the name. And the reason we're doing this is because we have those grid elements and we want some way of signifying that that service has been selected. So we click done. Then what we want to do is add another column, and this is going to be service/display name. This is going to be a template column, and this is going to be service selected. Service is going to be the name of the service. Selected is going to be selected, right? And I'll show you what this does. If I copy this, the basic cut, and I go into the booking form and I paste it here and I go back here, you can see that it signifies that this service has been selected. So I can just leave that for now, that's fine. What I want to do is just reshuffle this order, and we've got one more thing to add, and this is going to be a query column. This is going to be Barber/available. And we're going to select the query column. The source is going to be Barbers, and we're going to filter, and we're going to say services list includes this row ID, and Barber available is checked. Right? So if this Barber provides this particular service, we're going to pull it in, but we're only going to pull it in if they're actually available. If that available Boolean column is unchecked, they're not going to pop up here. So in terms of the services table, in terms of computed columns, we are done. All right, so let's jump into the bookings table. And what we're going to do is start adding some columns here, some computed columns. And the first one we're going to do is add Timeslot/end. This is going to be a math column, and it's going to be start plus the duration of the service. So start is going to be Timeslot start, and duration is going to be service duration. So it's actually pretty good at picking up which columns we intended it to actually select. So we're going to press done, and what we'll do is we'll just add the column, the row that we deleted, just for visual purposes. So we can duplicate this, and we can say this is the end with the buffer. And what we're going to do is just add a buffer. Now this buffer is going to be the user profile variables booking buffer. And the reason we want to do that is because when we're assessing whether or not a slot is free, we need to take into account the buffer. So we have the start and we have the end. And if the start was, for example, 9 AM, the buffer is currently 0, so it ends when the appointment ends. But if in the booking form we made the buffer 15 minutes, you can see that the end has now been extended by 15 minutes. So what I'm going to do is just go back and change this to 0, and we'll continue adding the various columns. So what we want to do now is add Timeslots, and this is going to be plural, and this is going to be related. And it's going to be a query column. The source is going to be Timeslots, and we're going to pull in values where the Timeslot value is greater or equal to this row Timeslot start, and the Timeslot value is less than, not less than or equal, less than this row Timeslot end with buffer. Now the reason we do less than instead of less than or equal to is that when the buffer ends at 5:55, for example, we want 5:55 as a start time to be available. So that's all that's doing. And that's the query column done. Then what we want to do is add time slots taken. And this is going to be a joined list. So we're going to join a number of values into a list. The values we're going to be joining is Timeslots related, the Timeslot ID, because this is pulling in basically all of the time slots that are taken by this particular booking. Then what we want to do is add another column, and this is going to be booking/start, and it's going to be an experimental code JavaScript. The code we're going to use is that nice little reusable code, and in this case it's going to be the Timeslot start. So now you can see we've got a nice and clean looking start time. We can duplicate this, and this is going to be booking end, and instead of this we're going to do end, and this is not end with buffer, this is just end. So we're good to go on that one. Then what we want to do is add basically another experimental code column, and this is going to be the date turned into the
the ID. So we're going to add a column to the right, and this is going to be booking slash date to ID. We're going to use that JavaScript column. The code is going to be that reusable code, the date to ID, and P1 in this case is going to be the booking date. So now, since that's empty, we're not getting anything, but if a date was there, we'd get a nice ID that we can use. Then what we want to do is add a new column, and this is going to be calendar start, and this is going to be a template column, and this is going to be date and time. So we're going to add date, we're going to add time. The date is going to be the booking date, and for the start, it's going to be the booking start. So we'll bring this over, and what I'll do is I'll just add 7th Sept 2023. So now you can see that when we're adding the calendar element, we've got a nice date and time that we can use as the start of the booking. And we can essentially duplicate this, and we can call this calendar end. And instead of the start, we're going to select the end. And what's going on here? Oh, we didn't set a duration. That's why. If the duration of the service was 30 minutes, you can see now that everything is making sense. So sometimes it actually helps to just add some data just so you're seeing everything pop up correctly. But now you can see that the calendar event is going to go from 9 AM on the 7th to 9:30, and it's going to give us a nice little calendar element. So what we want to do now is add some Barber computed columns, and the first one is going to be related, and this is going to be a relation column, and we're going to match any value where the Barber ID matches the row ID. So we click done, and then we're going to add another column, and this is going to be Barber / name. And since we're importing the Barber in this relation column, we can look up what their name is. So if I was to come in and copy Jimbo and paste his ID here, you can see that we're pulling in his name, and we've got the relation here to access all of that data. Now, in terms of the bookings table, computed columns, there might be a few more things, but as far as I'm concerned, that's it for now. All right, so we're going to quickly jump into the booking form and add a few columns that we will need to reference before we continue adding to the other rows. Tables. Forgive me, it's 10:15. All right, so let's jump into the booking form. And what we're going to do is add booking / day. So we can actually just add a column to the right. And it's going to be booking / day. And it's going to be a computed, experimental, date and time, format date. The date we're going to format is the booking date, and the format is going to be 4 C's. This is going to give us the day. So if you see here, if I type 7th Sept 2023, it's going to pull just the day, and we're going to use this to look up the trading hours of the store. So there's one more thing we need to do, and this is going to be booking date ID, and this is going to be that reusable snippet where we turn dates into IDs, and the date we're going to turn into an ID is the booking date. So we've got these two values. That's all we need to do for now for the booking form. All right, so now we're going to jump back into the users table and we're going to add two more items from the booking form. So we're going to add a column to the right, booking form slash, and this is going to be the date to ID. It's going to be a single value. It's going to be the first from the booking form, booking date to ID. And then we're going to add one more, and we can just duplicate it because it's another single value. And this one is going to be the day. So we're going to get the first from the booking form, booking day. We'll click done. And now you can see we've got the ID and the day imported into the user table, so we can reuse it throughout the rest of the app. Okay, so we've got two more tables to edit, and then the backend is completely done, which is awesome. So let's jump into the Barbers table, and the first thing we're going to do is add time off slash related. So we're going to pull in through a query column all of the time off, just to make sure that we can basically add correct date values. None of that made sense, but it will. So we add a query column. The source is going to be time off, and we're going to filter. So the Barber ID includes this row ID. Now, this is because we can actually add multiple people to a time off. Let's say we have 10 staff and 2 of them are going off for training. We can add time off for those 2 in the same row. And so we want to make sure that we're using includes this row ID. Or if there are no barbers, we want it to apply if Barber ID is empty. So if it's the time off is related to this barber, or it includes this barber's ID, pull it in. Or if it's blank, it means it's obviously a store-wide time off, and so we want to also pull that in. So we click done. Then what we want to do is add a column to the right, and this is going to be time off, and this is going to be unavailable dates, and this is going to be a joined list of all the unavailable dates, and we're just going to separate by comma. That's fine. The next thing we want to do is to allow us to select the barber's working hours on the front end. We want to pull in the specific time slots that are available on each specific day. So this is going to be trading hours Monday, and what we're going to do is get a single value, the first from trading hours time slots related. Okay, so these are Monday's time slots. So on the front end, we'll be able to select these time slots for Monday for this barber to specify whether or not they're available. Now what we're going to do is we can actually duplicate this, and we're going to call this Tuesday. And instead of getting the first, since in the table we went Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, blah, 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 we want to get from start, we want to get 1, because we know that 0 is the first, 1 is going to be the second. So what this is going to do is going to pull in Tuesday's time slots, and we just want to increment this by 1. We can actually call this Wednesday. Then we want Thursday. All right, then we want Friday. Then we want _d. And finally, actually I'll duplicate that. We want Sunday, and this is going to be the 7th row, which is identified by the number 6, which is a little bit of a wig out, but it is what it is. So then we have one more thing to add, and this is going to be basically a selector that returns to the booking form the time slots depending on what day the person has selected. So we're going to add a column, and this is going to be availability selector, and it's going to be an if then else. So if availability available is not checked, we're going to leave it blank. If time off, let me just see here, unavailable dates includes user profile, booking form, the ID that they've selected, then we're going to leave it blank. If user profile, booking form, day is Monday, not Moon Day, Monday, then we're going to return Monday's availability. And we repeat this, right? So user profile, booking form, day is Tuesday. Then we return Tuesday availability. If user profile, booking form, day is Wednesday, we're going to return the Wednesday. If user profile, booking form, day is Thursday, we're going to return the Thursday availability. And I know this is a little bit repetitive, but it is what it is. This is just how you do it. And when you think about it, if we can build an app that is this complex and this powerful in just an hour or two, it's pretty unreal, to be honest. So we get the booking form, day is Saturday, and you've got to make sure you're spelling these right, which I'm not very confident in, but it is what it is. Sunday, and we're going to pull in Sunday. So if else, we're going to leave it blank. So basically, depending on which day the person has selected in the form, different availability for this barber is going to be returned. So we click done, and this is the barber table complete. All right, we are officially on the home stretch. We have one more table to complete, and that is the bookings form table. So let's jump into it. And the first thing we're going to do is add a service/related column. And this is going to be a relation where the service selected matches the ID of a service. Click done. Then what we're going to do is add the service name. So we're going to look up from that related service. We're going to look up the service name, and then we're going to duplicate this so we can look up the service duration. Beautiful. Then what we're going to do is jump into the Barber section, and we're going to look up Barber/options. And this is going to be a list of barbers that are providing this service, basically. So if the barber has the service ID in their services list, they'll pop up and we're going to import them here. So this is going to be barber options. Then what we want to do is add a column called barber/option IDs. And this is going to be a joined list of the barber options row ID. So we get a list of IDs from the barbers that are providing this service. Then we're going to add a column to the right, and this is going to be the barber that has been selected. So we want to match using a relation column. We're going to match the barber selected with the barber row ID. And what I'll do is I'll just get Jimbo over here and put him in. And you know what? In the services, I'm going to add a basic cut to the services that Bob provides and Jimbo. So you can see that we're pulling that in now. Was that correct actually? Services list. Services. Oop. And availability is checked. That's why it wasn't popping up, because they weren't available. I was wigging out for a second there, but now they're going to pop up. So we can see these were the options, and these are the IDs, and the one we selected is Jimbo. So then what we're going to do is continue, and we're going to say barber/name, and we're going to look up the name of the barber that we've selected. So you can see we've selected Jimbo. Then what we want to do is add something called trading hours. So we're going to add a column to the right. This is going to be trading hours and related. And it's going to be a query column. Now, what we're going to do is, oh, sorry, I've jumped the gun here. We've got to add a related bookings column. So let's add bookings/related. And what we're going to do is pull in a relation column. No, sorry, query column. So booking/related is a query column. And the source is going to be bookings, where booking date ID is this row booking date ID. But we want to add another filter, and we want to make sure that the barber ID is this row barber selected. Okay, so we're only pulling in bookings where the ID of the date matches this date that they've selected, and it's specific to the barber, because 9 a.m. appointment for Bob doesn't mean someone can't book 9 a.m. appointment for Jimbo. So we're pulling in the related bookings. Now we're going to add the trading hours. Trading hours / related. And this is just going to be a relation column. And we're going to match the, excuse me a second, relation Okay, so the booking day is going to match the trading hours day name. So you can see it's a Thursday. So we're pulling in Thursday. And then what we want to do is look up the trading hours start. And we can duplicate this and look up the end. So this is going to be trading hours end. So we've got the start and the end of Thursday, which if we look in the trading hours, start and end, if I change this, if I made this 1020, you'll see that if I can scroll across, it's now changed. So I'll just go back and change this so we keep it all nice and consistent. And basically that in terms of trading hours, that we're pretty much done there. Then we need to add the validation. And this is where we're pulling in everything from the app. All of these values that we've been creating, the dates, the times, the time slot IDs, everything. This is like the crux of it. So we're pulling in this validation column group is where all of the logic is going to be computed. So what we're going to do is we're going to have validation all slots. And this is going to be a join list of time slots ID. So we're pulling in the IDs of all of the time slots, regardless of whether they are within the hours or not, because that validation will be done later. Then what we're going to do is we're going to create a list of all of the taken slots, and this is going to be from the bookings time slots taken. So we can see that there's 2 time slots that have been taken by the bookings that is related to Jimbo on this specific day. And then we're going to add another one, and these are going to be the Barber slots. And so this is going to be a join list of, I believe it's just the Barber. Where's the Barber related? It was supposed to be a lookup column, not a joined list, which is what I have in my instructions. So this is going to be validation slash Barber slots. So we've got all slots, taken slots, and then we've got a lookup of the Barber slots. Then we want to add a validation slash template, and as you might have guessed, this is going to be a template. Now what I'm going to do is copy some code and paste it here. I'll add the variables and then I'll explain what everything is. So P1, P2, P3, P4, P5, P6, P7. So in this case, P1 is going to be all of the slots. So we're going to pull in all of the slots. P2 is going to be the slots that are taken. So from that list of all slots, we're going to remove the taken. we're going to remove anything that's not inside the Barber slots. We are going to get the duration, because for each potential slot has a number of slots that it will encompass. And to calculate what they are, to figure out what they are, we need the duration. Because, for example, if an appointment is 15 minutes, it will take up one slot. So each possible slot needs to basically, you need to figure out which slots it's going to take up. Because if it's a 90-minute appointment, it's going to take up multiple slots. And each slot will have different slots that it's going to encompass. So it's a little bit confusing, but it's what we need to do. The P5 is going to be the start. P6 is going to be the end of the day. So we're going to make sure we're filtering out them as well. And P7 is just going to be the booking date. And we're going to make sure that we are basically checking that the date's been selected. And if it hasn't, we're going to return no date selected. So we click done. And the reason we add this as a template column is because when we add the JavaScript column, this is going to be validation slash valid, not salad, valid slots. When we select the JavaScript column, we only have 3 variables and we want more than that. So you put it in a template first and then you just run the code. So I think that's pretty neat, to be honest. And you can see here, we've already returned the valid slot. So the reason this is only returning 1 is because we're only giving him a very finite amount of slots, essentially 1 hour. But what we want to do is add the final columns. So what we want to do here is in Timeslots, we're going to add another column called Timeslots slash, if I can see it, options. And this is going to be a query column. And we're going to pull in time slots where, and this is why we were using that JavaScript to create a 4-decimal ID, is because what we want to do is pull in any time slots where the ID is included in this row time slots, validation valid slots. If we were trying to do a number, it would be greater than or less than. And the problem there is that what if we had greater than, 9 a.m., less than 3 p.m., but there was gaps in the middle where we didn't have availability? It would still be pulling in those time slots. So we don't want that. So we've got time slot ID is included in this row's valid slots. And you can see, because we've only got 1 valid slot, we're only pulling in 1 valid slot. And this is going to be the options, the choice component that the person is going to be using on the front end. So we are almost there. What we need to do now is add a column to the right called time slots slash related. And this is going to be a relation column. And we're going to match the selected with the time slot ID. Pretty sure that's what it is, because if I do this, yes, but it should be the time slot ID. So they've got these options. They're going to pick one. It's going to pop up here. We're going to pull in the related time slot that they have picked. We're going to add a column to the right, and this is going to be the form slash thank you title. Going to be a template. We're going to say thank you name, and the name is going to be the client's name. So that's all we need to do for that. Then we have just 2 more columns, I think. We're going to go back to the booking folder and we're going to add some stuff here. So what we're going to add is booking / timeslot start, and this is going to be a lookup of the related time slot start. So we can see it's 9:30 a.m. and this is so we can display it as a summary. And then we have one last column, booking / time. Oh, I've done the wrong thing. Actually, this should be, sorry, time slot value. And now we've got one last column. So this is going to be booking / time. And we can actually look up the time slot related start. So we're done. The back end now fully validates based on all of those parameters: opening and closing time of the store, whether the barber's available, what shifts they are working throughout the day. And this can be granular. If they have a 15-minute break, that will be taken into account. It's going to take into account any time off. It's going to take into account whether that time off is specific to a particular barber. It's going to take into account the fact that if they end at 5, that a 90-minute appointment cannot be booked at 4:30. The earliest will have to be 3:30. It's going to take into account the fact that you can add buffers. It's going to take into account dynamically the different booking intervals that you have, like 9, 8:30. It's going to take into account everything, the buffer time between appointments. It's going to take into account the fact that you can't start within another appointment, end within another appointment, encompass another appointment. It's going to take into the fact, I can't even speak anymore. It's going to do a lot of things. All right. So this is the back end complete. And now we're going to jump onto the front end. All right. So let's jump onto the layout screen. And what I've actually done is I've pre-built everything from scratch, because it's much easier for me to explain something that's already pre-built and make sure it's all running correctly and I'm not, solving bugs in a tutorial, because with any building process, there's always going to be some sort of issue or a function that's not working and that sort of thing. So to save you from that, and also to save me time, I've pre-built it. And what I'm going to do is going to go through each page, page by page, component by component, through all of the settings and show you exactly where to map the columns to, all of the visibility settings, the validation settings, everything. So you won't be missing out on anything, and I'll be able to basically speed up the process with which I can kind of show you how to build the front end. So let's jump into the layout tab. And what I'm going to do is we'll start on the settings page. So on the settings page, right, we're just going to add a custom screen. Okay. Once we've added it, the source is going to be users, and we're going to just call it a settings page. The label will be settings. And for the icon, we can just make it this cog icon. And in terms of visibility, we actually want to allow admins to see all the back end, but public users to only be able to see the front end. And so what we want to do is in options, we just want to make this visible when the row ID is not empty. And since public visitors won't have a row ID, it'll be empty, which means they won't be able to actually view this particular page. And so we've kind of made it basically only visible to admins. The rest we don't need to touch. You can add, proper navigation and title and slug settings. That's fine. But then what we want to do is, now that we've set up the page, we're going to jump into the components. And the first component we're going to add is the title component. And it's just going to be a simple title component. So we're going to add that at the top of the page. And in the settings, in general, we're going to have the style is simple. The title is going to be settings. We're going to leave the rest blank. We don't actually need anything else there. The design, we're going to make it compact. The image is going to be filled. This doesn't really matter because we don't have an image. But what we're going to do is we're going to add an action. And this action is going to be the edit button. And what we want to do is, instead of having it as the first item in our actions, and it's highlighted like this, we want to make it a bit more subtle. So what you need to do is basically add another button and just make the action none. And then you can drag that above, and it just makes it a little bit less intrusive because it's not the main feature of this page. So once we've done that, we want to add the edit button, and it's going to be edit, the title. The icon is going to be the little cog icon. And what we're going to do is go to navigation, show new screen. And the screen that we're going to show is going to be the user profile, booking form, related, right? Because on this edit screen, we want to edit basically some values, mainly the interval and the booking buffer. So the main form that we're going to be displaying will be showing the details screen of the booking form. And so we don't want to really mess with that. So what we're going to do is show a new screen, a custom screen for the booking form with just the two edit fields. And the target, we're going to make it slide in. All right. So I'll leave this like this, and I'll just show you that there's basically no other settings here. But what we can do is jump into the actual edit screen. And you can see here, we've got a number of settings for the app, right? So this is an admin settings. This is where they would basically set up the store in terms of buffers, opening time, close time, that sort of thing. So the first thing I want to point out is that the details is called admin settings. So this is just to signify that it's basically the edit page for the admin settings. So we can say admin settings. And then we have a number of containers. The first container is just a full, and basically to add the container, we just, the container is just this one. It's in the layout section. So we're going to add a container. It's going to be full. We don't need a background for this particular one, and we don't need to set any options. Now, within this container, we're going to have a number entry. And if you look in the components, that's down here. So it's under form elements. It's going to be a number entry. And what we're going to do is we are going to basically, the data, the column that we're going to show is, since we've opened a new screen for the booking form, we have access to all the values on the booking form. And what we want to do is set the column value to booking interval, right? So this is how many minutes between each possible time slot do you want? And like I said before, I wouldn't go below 15 because it exponentially becomes more and more slots. Like if you did every minute, you'd have to add 1,440 rows. So that's not really feasible. We would have to work out some other way of generating the time slots, which I'm sure there is actually. But for now, we're going to set it to booking interval. And you see here, I've made the minimum interval 15. This is just so if anybody comes in after you've created the app and wants to change it from the front end and they don't have access to the designer, they won't be able to pull it below 15 minutes because obviously we don't even have the rows in that time slot table. We've only added enough rows for 15-minute intervals. The label, we can just put it as booking interval, and then here we can even put a placeholder example 15 minutes. Okay. In the options, there's nothing here. So that's that first one. In the second one, it's exactly the same thing, except now we're looking up the booking buffer. The minimum value here can be 0. So if an appointment starts at 8, ends at 8:30, if the buffer is 0, the next person can book from 8:30 onwards. So that's fine if it's 0. We don't want any negative numbers, obviously. The label can be booking buffer. And here we can actually put another placeholder value. So we've got the booking buffer and the booking interval. These are both number entries from the form elements. Then what we want to do is we want the person, the admin or the store manager, to be able to set opening and close times for the store. And so the best way to enable them to do that in terms of a user interface, user experience point of view, is to add a custom collection. So we've got this container, and then below it, we're going to add a custom collection. And to add a custom collection, you select custom under the collections tab. And so we've got custom collection, and the source is going to be the trading hours. Now, in our trading hours table, you saw that we had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all the way down to Sunday. And so this is going to basically show those records, and we can basically add some custom components to allow us to very easily change the opening and close time of the days, the store on certain days. And so in the custom collection settings, where in general, the source is going to be trading hours. We don't need a title. We're going to change it from grid to full. The background is going to be card. Now this is not necessary, but I prefer it because it delineates each item much more clearly. And we don't need to touch any of this. In the options, we haven't done anything here. And in the actions, we haven't done anything either. In fact, what we did do was remove, we don't want to view detail screen for this, right? We don't want it selectable. So what you want to do is change what happens when the item is clicked to nothing. We don't want anything to happen because we want them to be able to manipulate these drop downs without accidentally clicking through to a detail screen that provides no value. So we've got these settings set up, and then within each custom collection item, we're just going to add some text, and this is going to be the day name, and you can change this to whatever text style you like. But what we want to do, since this is showing all of the days, in this text component, we have access to the information from the day. And in this case, we want the text to be the name of the day. So you can see here we've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, etc. And you can align it however you want. It doesn't really matter. But that's all we've done for this. So we're showing the day name and we're selecting a style. The day start, and this text component was just this text component here. Then what we want to do is add a choice component. And to do that, we're going to go down to form elements, choice. So we're going to add a choice component. And once you've added that, we want to basically set it up. So we want to write 2, which basically means the value that we want to override is the day start. All right? So whatever we choose here is going to be put into that cell. The source is going to be time slots, right? Because when they click it, we want them to see a whole variety of time slots. The value, so just to show you how you do that, you click that here. The value is going to be time slot value. So this is going to write that number in minutes. So it could be 540, 360, 1020, whatever it is. So we're going to be writing the time slot value. We don't have an image. And we're going to display it as time slot start. And so this is basically the the minutes that we've converted into a time using that reusable formula. All right, so this is going to show, in this case, 9 a.m. And that's what it's going to do. So in terms of labels, we're going to say store opens. Okay, so we're going to say, when does the store open? The style is going to be a drop down. If you do any other option, you're going to see way too many options because there's 96, right? So it needs to be a drop down. We're not going to allow multiple, and we don't need it required, because what if we don't want to open on a certain day, right? Then in the options, nothing's changed here. So what this is going to do is, when I click this, it's going to allow me to select from the entire list of slots a open time and a close time. And so if I come in here and I select 9 a.m, or I unchecked it, but if I select, let's say 9:30, you can see the store opens at 9:30 on a Monday. And this means that any booking, even if the barber has hours from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m, if the store only opens at 9:30, bookings will only be available from 9:30. And so this is a kind of like a backup, right? Because let's imagine this scenario. We initially set a store open time of 8 a.m. Then, once we've added the settings page for the barbers, we specify that a barber is available from 8 a.m. onwards. 6 months later, we change the opening time of the store to 9 a.m, but we forget to change the barber's times. This is going to make sure that bookings can still only be made from 9 a.m. instead of 8 a.m. So it's kind of like a backup. And this is why we did all that validation in the booking form table, because there are so many moving parts, and we need to make sure that everything is taken into account in terms of validating or verifying that a booking can actually be made. So we've got this choice component, and then we're going to add another choice component, almost exactly the same, except this time we're going to be writing to the day end, and instead of displaying the start, we're going to display the end, right? Because this is basically, it's going to be the end of a slot, which is essentially the last slot of the day. So if the last slot of the day is 4:45 till 5, that's the last slot. You can't book from 5 onwards. So that's what we're going to select, but what we're going to display is the end time. So it's just a little bit easier to conceptualize. Otherwise, if we had to put here the time slot start, it would be a little bit weird to end at 4:45, right? Even though technically it's correct, because that's the last 15-minute slot. So the last booking can only be made at 4:45. But just for clarity's sake, we want to show the end. So we're still selecting the right value, but it just looks cleaner for us. And then we're going to change the label to store closes, and options is basically going to be left as is. So that is the admin page, and with any day that we don't want open, we can just leave it as this value at the top. Now what we can do is, let's say on a Saturday we close a little earlier. Let's close at 12 p.m. So we'll close at midday on a Saturday, and we'll look into this when we're creating the other pages, and I'll show you that bookings will not be allowed on a Saturday after basically 11:45 if it's a 15-minute appointment. Okay, admin settings are done. Now what we want to do is add a container. So this is layout container. We're going to make it a 1:2 ratio. So we've got a small column and a big column. The background is going to be card. So we're going to select card. And the options we don't need to touch. Then the first component that we're going to add in the left-hand column is going to be a collection, and it's going to be a table. Okay, so we add a collection table. The source is going to be services. The title is going to be services. So in here, we're just selecting services. Title, services. Style, table. We're going to display the service name as the title. The description is going to be the service duration. And we're going to leave the rest. And this is just personal preference, but in this case, I've switched it from default to minimal and then left it like that. So it just delineates it with a line. It's much cleaner in my opinion for this particular use case. So this is what we've done. In the options, we've left it as is. We haven't changed anything. In the actions, we've done a few things. Now, the first thing we've done is we've added a add a service button as the title bar action. So we've added an action, and then what we've done is we've said the title is add service. We've chosen the plus icon, and the form screen that we're showing is going to be a slide in. So we're selecting navigation, show form screen. We're going to display it as a slide in. And when we click this button now obviously it looks a bit squished, but if I remove this, it looks proper. So when we click this, you'll see that the slide in comes in. For the form options, the title, we want add a service. And for general, the destination is going to be the services table. So we're adding a service to the services table. And on submit, we're going to show a notification, and it's going to say service added. All right. So for the form, this is the settings. And then for the components, we're going to add a container. And I would suggest adding a container for most things, because you'll find more often than not that you need to copy components and paste them somewhere else. And with this, you can actually just copy the container and everything inside it gets brought with it. Otherwise, you would have to individually copy and paste each component, and that's a little time consuming. So I'd recommend you put everything in a container, in a form or an edit screen or something like that. So once we've added the container, it's going to be a full with no background, and there's no settings we need here. We're going to add a text entry component, right? That's the first one here. The column is going to be the service name. The label is going to be name. We can put a placeholder if we want. And we're going to make it required. So we've got service name, the label's name, placeholder is basic cut. We don't have any settings for this particular thing. The next one is going to be a number entry. And we're going to write to the service duration column. No default value. Minimum value, we can actually say 15 minutes. And so this is so I mean, this isn't actually necessary. You could have a 5-minute appointment. I don't know what that would be, but in this case, we can just leave it as 15 minutes. The label is going to be duration, and the placeholder is going to be example 30 minutes. And then in the options, we've left it like this. There's nothing there. And we've made this required as well. And then finally, we're going to add an image. So this is going to be writing to the image column. The label is going to be image. We've made it required. They can add from the camera or photo roll. And there are no options here. So what we want to do is, before we close this, because this is set up now, this is all done. Before we close this, we want to copy this container, close it, go back to our services collection, go to the actions, and we're going to add some collection item actions. Now the first one is going to be navigation, show edit screen. So this is going to be where we can edit the service. So we're going to show edit screen. It's going to be for this item, and it's going to be a slide in. So once we've set that button up, and you can see here, it will appear as a little drop down. When we click that, what we can now do is paste, even though I've already done it, but you can paste the same fields from the form into the edit screen. And it saves you having to re-add it and reconfigure it. The only thing we need to do, because these are all correctly set up, right? They still have all the placeholders. They have everything we need, basically. All we need to do is on the actual edit form, you just need to call it edit service. And in general, we want to show a notification on submit that the service has been edited. Okay? So if I click submit, it'll say service edited. And that's actually all you need to do for the edit screen. And then the last thing we want to do is for the collection, let's go back to services, go to actions, and we want to add a data delete row action, and we're going to be targeting this item, right? So we've got two collection item actions, edit and delete. If I click this, it deletes the service. So that's the services done. And then we're going to jump into the time off. So this, which is in the big column of the container, is a collection calendar. And what we're going to do is, if we jump into general, the source is going to be time off. Now, thinking back, we could probably have called this like blocked dates or something like that. But essentially the concept is the same, right? We are blocking dates, or we are designating time off for either the entire store or individual people. So the source is going to be time off. The title is going to be time off. The items data title is going to be event name. The start time is going to be event start. And the end time is going to be event end. Okay? And the default mode for this view is going to be month, and the default date is going to be today. In terms of options, we don't need to touch anything, but we do want to configure some actions. The first is we're going to allow events to be added, because this makes it very easy for someone to come in and block date, right? That's extremely easy. And we want to allow the changing the time of events, because then we can actually do this and drag it out. So now we've blocked 2 days. So because we set it up on the back end correctly, we've got this beautiful ability to add basically block dates very, very easily. So we'll leave those two like that. What we do want to do is add a title bar action. So this is going to be show form screen. So we're going to navigate, show form screen. It's going to be a slide in. It's going to be called add time off. And we're going to have a plus icon. And when we click that, in the form options, the title is going to be add time off. In general, the destination is going to be time off. Now, what we want to do here is configure these fields. Okay. But on submit, we have a custom action. So let's jump into that. And all we're doing here is showing a notification. So we're showing a notification and we're saying time off added. And then we're going to set the event start the event end. Hang on. We don't actually need to do that. It's a redundant it's a redundant action, I believe. I think we can actually delete this. Yeah, that was something else I was messing around with, but I don't think we actually need it because this is setting it anyway. So we don't need a custom action. In fact, all we need to do is on submit, show a notification, and it's going to be event added. So in the container, and we're going to do the same thing because if we need to edit the event, we just want to be able to copy this and paste it into the edit screen because this is the form screen and we can paste it in the edit screen. So we're going to add a container. We're going to add a text entry component. The column it's going to be writing to is the event name. The label is going to be name. The placeholder is going to be, for example, Christmas. And this is where you can add like public holidays or whatever it is, retreats that you're going on, or training. If particular staff are doing some training, you can block their time out. But we're going to make it required. And in the options, we're going to leave it. Then we're going to have a date component. And just be wary here that you're selecting date and not date time, because we only want to set the date for this particular thing. So we've got the date component. The column we're going to write to is the event start. Don't need a default value. The label is going to be date. The placeholder, since we use Christmas as the placeholder up here, we can show that the example start date is the 25th of December, and we're going to make it required. And realistically, we could say today or later, but it doesn't matter because this is kind of an admin functionality. But you could say today or later. And then that's it. There's no options or anything like that. In the date ends, what we're going to do is we're going to write to the event end. This is another date component, not date time. And since we use Christmas as the example, Christmas, basically the end date is going to be the next available date that we can begin working again, right? So when it ends is when we're actually able to work. And so this will be the 26th, the day after Christmas is the first day back. You could even, first day back, just to make it a bit clearer, right? Because if it's a 1 day off, it's always going to be the day off as the start, and then the next working day is going to be the end. And you could select something here as well. You could say today or later. And in fact, you could probably filter it. Oh no, you can't filter it. That's fine. But yeah, we can leave that. And so we've got Christmas is on the 25th. The first day back is the 26th. So that's all we need for these components. And then the last one is a choice component. And this is where we're going to optionally specify which employees or which barbers this time off block is specific to. So let's say that we had many more barbers and Steve was going to go off to do training. We could say, you know, training, and we can mark out the date. And the first day he's back is on Tuesday, so time slots on Tuesday will be available for him. Now, for him, it'll be blocked out, but if we had many more staff and we wanted maybe Bob to go as well, we could add him. And so we can add as many or as little as we want, and that time slot will be blocked out for them. So the settings, we're writing to the Barber ID, and this should probably be plurals. It should be IDs, because we can have multiple separated by a comma in this particular column. The source is going to be Barbers. The values is going to be row IDs. The image is going to be the Barber image. And we're going to display it as the Barber name. So the design is basically just, we're going to specify a label. It's going to be Barber, and we're going to let people know that it's optional. We don't have to add this, because if it's a store-wide time off or a block date, then if there's no ID of a specific person, it will apply to everyone. And so we're going to make sure that we allow selecting multiple. And in the options, we don't need to send anything. But to get it to look like this, we're going to change it from a drop down to chips. Okay. So we've got all that set up, and it's within a container. So again, what we can do is copy this, and then basically we can close the form because we've set up everything else. So we can close this, and we're going to go back to the collection. We're going to go back to actions, and on item click, we're going to show the edit screen for this item as a slide in. So when I click this, this is what's going to pop up, and we can click over here and then just paste, and you'll see that all those values which we've already set up and configured can be pasted into the edit screen. And I can get rid of this. And then all I've done is renamed in options for the form. I've renamed it to edit holiday. This should actually be edit time off. So we've got edit time off as the options. In general, we're just going to show a notification when this is submitted, and we can say time off is edited. And that's all I've done for this. And then I've just added a button, right? And this is just a component under actions. It's just called button. We've set it as basic, auto, accent off, labels show. We're aligning to the left. And this button, we can actually say, we can just leave it as delete actually. So what we're doing here is the title is going to be delete. The icon is going to be this little trash icon under objects. The action we're going to perform is data delete row this item. So if I click this, it will delete this time off. And in fact, since we've set everything up and there's nothing else we need to do for this form, I can actually delete it, and you can see that that has been deleted. And so in terms of this settings page, we're actually finished. We've set everything up. The container, the title, the settings, everything has been set up. So what we're going to do now is move on to the Barbers page. All right, so we've done the settings page and we can see that it's looking really nice. Even if we make it a mobile preview, it's very, very clean, very easy to see and to operate. Now what we want to do is add a new page, right? So we're going to go here, custom screen. We're going to, source is going to be users, label is going to be Barbers, it's going to be a custom page. We're going to select the little people as the icon. And the options, we're going to do the same as we did for the settings. We're just going to show this tab when the user profile row ID is not empty. So that's all we need to do for that. Then in components, we're going to add a custom collection. So we're going to go components, custom, and we're going to add that in. And in the settings, general, we're going to have the source is going to be the Barbers. Okay. The title is going to be Barbers. The layout is grid. The title style is simple. The background is card. And the grid size is medium. Now, this is all just aesthetic choices that I've made. It's up to you if you want to copy it or not. But this is just the way after trial and error, I think it looks the best. So in options, we can leave the search bar. And in actions, what we're going to do is configure these. Now, when you first add it, you're going to see something like this, right? You're not going to be really seeing anything popping up, and that's fine. You will as you add the components. So yeah, don't worry if it's looking different, and this is the same as the settings and stuff like that. So we've added the custom collection, and what we want to do is actually we can set this up first before we dive into the actions. We can just set up the actual items. So the first thing we can do is add an image. This is content image. In general, the image source is going to be image. We're going to make it square. We're going to make it 16 by 9. We're going to align it to the middle. And then we don't actually need any other settings. So that's the image. Then we're going to add some text, which is this text component. And the text is going to be the barber name. And we can display it as meta text. So it makes it kind of highlighted. And now the last thing we're going to do is, because this is a custom collection, we can actually manipulate data. Just like we did with the trading hours, we can manipulate the data in the particular Barbers row. And so what we want to do is, in form components, we want to add a switch. All right, so this switch is going to be below the Barber's name. And the column that we're going to manipulate is going to be availability, whether the barber is available or not. So if I uncheck this, Steve and Bob are now unavailable and people cannot book them. If I check Steve, he's bookable, Bob's not. And if I check both, then they're both bookable. So we're going to leave this as a switch, and we can just add, instead of a label, we just add a description just to make it a little less bold, basically. So we're going to add a description, and it's going to say available. And in the options, we don't need anything. So now that we've set up the custom collection, we want to go to the actions, and we're going to add some actions. So item click, I believe by default it's going to show detail screen, and we can leave that for now. But what we want to do is add a button that opens up a form screen. So in the title bar action, we're going to add an action where the title is add a barber. It's going to be a plus button, a plus icon. And we're going to show form screen as a slide in. So once we've set that up and we click, now we're going to see a form to add a barber to our database or to our app. And so we're going to make sure in the form, in general, the table that we're going to be basically adding to is Barbers. We're going to show a notification when the barber has been added. Right, this is barber added. And options, we're going to call it add a barber. And that's this title up the top here. So once we've set that up, you'll be seeing a screen like this. You can delete any values that were previously showing. And we're going to start from scratch. So we're going to have a container because we're going to copy and paste this into the edit of the barber. So it's the same process. So we're going to add a text entry, and that's going to be in edit components. That's going to be text entry. The column is going to be the barber name. The label is going to be the name. And in fact, we should make this required. So we don't need to change anything else. So we've got the name there. We're going to do an image. In general, it's going to be the barber image. So this is where that's going to be sent to. The label is going to be image. And we can make this required as well. So you've got a photo of the barber. We don't need to set any options here. We can leave it like that. Then what we're going to do is add a choice component. So that's this choice component. And this is going to write to the services list, right? So we need to set up the other settings, and I'll explain what it does basically. So in the source, we're going to select services. The values is going to be the row ID of the service. The images is going to be the service image. And we're going to display it as the service name. We're going to put services as the label. We're going to show it as chips. And we don't want it to be required because sometimes we want, like maybe the service doesn't exist yet that we want this barber to have. And they don't provide these two. So we'll just leave it as not required. And we actually want to make sure we allow the selection of multiple. Okay. So what this is going to do, there's nothing we need to do here. What this is going to do is allow us to specify which services this particular barber can provide. Because maybe there's certain levels. Maybe a barber is a trainee and he can only do basic cuts, or maybe he's a veteran in the barbering industry and he can do anything, and so you select everything. So that's basically what we're doing with these values. Then we want to add a switch component, and this is the same switch component that we had on the custom collection. So default value is going to be on, right? Because by default we want them to be available. The column it's going to write to, it's going to be availability available, and you can see it's a boolean here. Default value on, style is switch, label is available, and it doesn't matter actually, since it's in the form. I think it's fine like that. And there's nothing we need to do in the options. Okay, so then what we're going to do is basically set up the ability to specify to the degree, to the slot when this barber is available. So we're going to add a choice component, and the column that we're going to be writing to is availability Monday. The source is going to be time slots. The values is going to be time slot ID. Okay, so time slot ID. No image, and we're going to display it as time slot start. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to have a label of Monday. The style is going to be drop down, and we're going to allow them to select multiple. And now in the options, we're going to leave it as is. And if we go here, this should actually be, it shouldn't be time slots. I believe it should be because we haven't added it yet, so it doesn't know which time slots are available. Okay. I think we can actually remove this because the barber needs to be added first before they can actually specify when they're available. So I think actually what we can do is remove these choice components, because if we dive in, and I'll show you how to build all this, but if we dive in, these are going to be, the source is going to be trading hours. Yep. Okay, so in this form, we can actually remove all of these. And that's actually all we need for now. So what we can do is copy this. This form is now done. And then we can jump into the details page and we can continue building this out here. So first thing we want to do is add a breadcrumbs component. And in the details, the navigation title is going to be the barber's name. So we've got Barbers and then the barber's name. Then we're going to add a title component. And this is just this here. But we're going to select the cover. And so you can see here we selected cover. And what we're going to do is the title is going to be the barber's name. The subtitle is going to be blank. The image is going to be the barber image. And if you want, you can select some sort of header image, but I haven't done anything for that at the moment. The size is going to be compact. The image fill, we can just leave it as fill. And then we have a few actions. We have an edit button and a delete button. The delete button is just going to delete this item. Right, so we go data, delete row, this item. The edit button is going to show an edit screen for this item as a slide in. Okay, so we've got edit, we've selected the little cog. The other one was the trash icon. And again, we've added that none button action just so we have them less eye-catching. We don't need them to be, bright orange. So we've got these two buttons, and at the moment, what we can do is jump into the edit screen. So what we can do is once we've got this up, you can clear whatever's here and paste what you had from the form. So you can see we're doing certain things over and over, which is why over time you realize how much more convenient it is to have it in a container instead of having to copy individually. So since I've already done that, I can delete that. And once you've pasted it, let's just edit quickly the details of the form. So I've got navigation title is going to be edit barber. And in general, on submit, we can actually show a notification and we can say barber edited. So that's in terms of the form, it's done. In the container, since we've got the last component you should see is the switch, then we're going to add a choice component. And the reason I removed it from the form is because these choice components, right, are looking up these. Okay, because each day has certain start and end times. And so we only want to show them as the available options in terms of a barber's time slots. And so if we haven't added the row yet, these don't exist, which is why it wasn't showing properly before. So because on the add form screen, we haven't actually added the barber yet. So these values didn't exist. So we couldn't use that as the source for the drop down. So what we do is we kind of segment it, right? You add the barber first, and then you can select the hours that applies to them. So we're going to add a choice component. So in the edit components, this is going to be a choice component. It's going to be a drop down. And the first one, we're going to write to Monday. We're going to select the source as trading hours, Monday. The values is going to be the time slot ID. So these are the IDs, those little string decimals. The ID of each time slot that we want this barber to be available. The value, the image is going to be blank, and we're going to display it as the time slot name. And this is going to be 9 a.m. to 9:15, 9:15 to 9:30, that sort of stuff in the drop down. The label, we're going to have Monday, and we're going to we make sure that we allow selecting multiple. So it'll be a choice drop down and allow selecting multiple. And in the options, we haven't done anything. Now, what this will do is now you can see before when I added this choice component into the add form screen or submit form screen, it had from midnight to midnight. Now it has from the opening hours of Monday to the closing hours of Monday. And nothing outside of this range can be selected for this barber because the store isn't open, right? And so what we can do is now that we've added this field, we can specify to an incredibly specific amount the time slots that this barber is available. So you can see here from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. they're available. They have a break from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. and then from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. they're available again. Now, the reason this is in my opinion, such a good way of organizing the time slots is because if they want in the morning a half an hour break, for example, from 10:30 to 11, we can get really granular with when they're available, right? That could be like the first break and then they could have a second break here. And so any appointment that is, for example, half an hour in length, the last slot in the morning will be 10 a.m. because it will finish at 10:30 and then they go on a break. So you cannot book a half an hour appointment at 10:15 because at 10:30 this person's on a break. That time slot's not available. And so it just allows incredibly accurate and granular time slot allocation to barbers. And it's what the whole system is built on, this idea of time slots being taken or available. So what we want to do is, I'm not going to go through it now because it's exactly the same thing. So on Tuesday, we just change all the details to Tuesday, trading hours Tuesday, we call it Tuesday, we write to Tuesday, and we do it all the way down to Sunday. Sunday's not appearing here because we specified that there was no available start and close time on Sunday. And so you can see even on Saturday, it's limited it to 12 items because we're only open from 9 till 12. So it's not even allowing us to select anything outside that range. Now, the beauty of this is, even if the barber has more availability on Saturday than the store is open or closed, it still won't let the person book. So if I go to Barbers, and let's take Friday's availability and paste it into Saturday's availability, and we can even do Sunday's availability. If I go to the layout screen, Saturday is still only going to show 12 items, and in the booking form, this person will only be able to be booked from 9 till 12. So there's this built-in validation and security that nothing outside of the proper operating hours is going to be able to be booked. So that's pretty awesome, if you ask me. So we've done this. This is that container. Now we can close this screen. So we've got edit, we've got delete, and then all we need to do is add a collection. And this is just going to be a collection of bookings that are specific to this barber. So we've got the week view here of the collection. So to add this, you just go calendar, and then we're going to add some settings. So the source is going to be bookings. The title is going to be booking, or we can make this maybe the client name. Then the start time from the bookings table is going to be calendar start. The end time is going to be calendar end. The default mode is going to be week, and the default date is going to be today. So we don't need a title, because if we add a title, it just kind of messes up the aesthetic of the page. So we can delete the title, we leave it blank. And in the options, all we're going to do is filter these events so that the barber ID of the booking is the current barber's row ID. So this green row ID. So we're only pulling in bookings that are specific to this barber. And in the actions, we're going to uncheck the adding of events, uncheck the ability to change time. We don't want a title bar action. But what we do want is when they click on an item, it shows a detail screen for this item. And so what I might do is on the back end, I'll just add an event. So I add a booking so we can actually view the details page and set it up properly. So let's go to bookings. And let's say 7th Sept 2023. Let's go to the barbers and get a barber. And these are actually different names because the back end and the front end are from different apps. So it should be Jimbo. You can change it to Jimbo. So let's get the row ID of the barber. Let's say the client name is Robert. This can be the number, and we can say rob@me.com. Okay. We'll just add a service. Make sure that this is one that Jimbo actually provides. Otherwise, it'll be a little bit confusing. So the name can just be basic cut, and the duration can be 30 minutes. because I'm pretty sure. Oh no, styled cut 60 minutes. Okay. So we can add this. And the time slot start, let's just say this is the first one in the morning. And then that should be all good to go. So now we can see that at 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., because it's a 60-minute appointment, we've got an appointment. Jimbo has an appointment with Robert. And yeah, that's what it is. And so now we can show the detail screen for this item by clicking here. And all we're going to do for this screen is we're going to set the navigation title as the booking start. Now you can customize this again. You can create a custom template that says, you know, Robert's booking at 9 a.m. or whatever it is. But for now, we'll just leave it as 9 a.m. And we're going to add a container. In this container, it's going to be a full with no background and no options. In this container, we're going to have a text field. All right. The title, the text is going to be booking summary. The style is going to be meta text. And that's it for this one. Then we're going to add some fields, right? So in content, there's a component called fields. And we're going to leave the title blank. There's no options. So we're going to leave the title blank. And then we're going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different fields or options. The first one is going to be the client name. The second one is going to be the client phone number. The third one is going to be the client email. The fourth will be the service name. The fifth will be the service duration. The sixth will be the barber name. Seventh will be the booking date. And the eighth will be the booking start. Okay, so this is just a summary for us internally as managers to see the details of this booking. And it also allows us to cancel the booking. So what we want to do is add a button block or a button, right? Either is fine. And we're going to leave it basic, width, auto, accent off, show labels, and we can just simplify it to cancel. Actually, we'll leave it cancel booking. We can select the trash icon, and this is all this is going to do is delete row, and it's going to delete this item. Okay. Now what you should do theoretically is when you click this button, you could make it a custom action that sends an email to the person saying, hey, sorry, we canceled your booking. Please make another booking here. And you can link to the form again or something like that. In this case, I'm just keeping it simple, but it just shows you the power of building out a custom booking form is that you can customize it in any way you want. You can send them a voucher if you want as a consolation or whatever it is. It's just really flexible. So that's all we need to do. There's nothing else. And we can close this, and the Barbers page, the details page, and the home page here is done. And so now we're moving on to the last page, which is the bookings page. All right, guys, we're on to the last page. We're wrapping it up now. Let's finish strong. So what we want to do is we're going to add another custom screen, and it's going to be called bookings. And what we want is basically the source is going to be users. The label is going to be bookings. We can select a little calendar component as the icon. It's going to be a custom. And in the options, we're not going to set any visibility options because we're going to do it per component, not page, but per component. And the reason we're doing this is because one component will be visible to admins or barbers, and the other component will be visible to the public, which will allow them to place bookings once we publish this app. So we're not touching anything here. We've set this up. So let's begin adding the various components. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to anyone so I can show you the various components. So this is what the public will see, right? They won't see any of the buttons to go to the options page, the settings page, the barber page, or anything like that. All they'll see is this page. They can click this, but they won't be able to sign in because we'll specify in the settings who can sign in. So all they're going to see is a very clean call to action to make a booking. Okay? So what we're going to do is, what I'm going to do is explain how to build out this page step by step. So you won't need to switch to anyone at the moment because you'll still be able to see everything. You haven't set any visibility yet. But what you want to do first is add a container. And this container, we're going to make it a 2-to-1 container. And that's what we're going to do there. And we don't need to set this yet because it'll be hard for you to build it out. We'll set that at the end. So just add a container, make it 2-to-1. We don't need a background. And we want to align it to the center. In the left-hand side, we're going to add a title component. It's going to be a simple title component. So that's this one here. The title is going to be welcome to my barbershop. And then we're going to, it doesn't matter if we leave it default or whatever. And we're not going to set any actions for this because we're going to actually just replace it with a button. And the reason I did that is because when you view it on mobile, I want the button to be big. And if it was an action for this title, it would be small and it would be cut off. So I want a nice big button. So that's why we did it like this. So that's actually all we need to do for this title component. And in the right-hand column, this is where we're going to add that button. So we're going to add a button. It's going to be basic, wide, accent on, labels show, and nothing for the options. But in the action, what we're going to do is we're going to make a custom action. Okay? So we can jump into that. I was wondering whether I should explain how to do the image, but we can jump into the action and then I'll just show you what to do with the image. So this action is, the title is going to be make a booking. The icon is going to be the plus icon. And what we're going to do is set up a new action called booking open form. So when you click this, it'll open up the action editor. And you'll see something like this, but it will be basically blank. And then what we're going to do, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to add a data set column values action. And we're going to set the column values, not for this item, which will be the user profile, but we're going to select the row as user profile, booking form, related. So what this is doing is, because we added the booking form as a single value in the users table, we can now edit and manipulate it or open it or do many things with it. And so that's what we're going to select. And then the actual settings, once we've selected it, we're going to clear any previous booking date that we had. We're going to clear, and to do that, you just select clear value. So we're going to clear the booking date, clear the client name, clear the client phone number, clear the email, leave the variable booking interval. Do not clear that because that's a static value that we want to remain the same. We're going to leave the booking buffer, but we're going to clear the selected service. We're going to clear the barber that we selected, and we're going to clear the time slot that we selected. Now, the last thing we want to do is set the form page as the number 1, because as they progress through this multi-step form, they're going to be increasing and decreasing the page number. And so to begin with, we just want to set it as 1. Okay? So this is that values. And then all we're going to do is show a detail screen for user profile, booking form, related. Okay? And the target is going to be a slide in. So what we're doing is we're clearing out the form and then we're opening it. Okay? So once you've set that up, you can leave it for now. What I'll do is I'll just explain the last bit, which was a container. And we just have an image that I've just set basically manually. And these two containers are going to be visible when the row ID is empty. So when row ID is empty, it's going to show, which means it's going to show to any public users, any users that aren't signed in, that don't have an account. So these two containers have those settings. But before we get onto the actual calendar bookings, let's open up this booking form. So we click make a booking, and what it's going to do is it's going to open up a detail screen from the form, and you're probably going to see maybe 3 elements. It's going to be like breadcrumbs, title, and something else. Clear it out, get it nice and blank, and then we're going to do the following things. So the first thing we're going to do is set the navigation title as a title that you want, Barber Bros booking, and just bear in mind that this will be public. So Barber Bros booking, and that's all we need to do in terms of the details. And then we're going to add a number of containers. 1, 2, 3, 4 containers. So let's start with the first container. So in components, add a container, make it full, make the background none, and we don't need, actually we do need options. And this container is going to show, right, when the page that they're on in the form is equal to 1. So when the form page, and this is from our booking form table, right? This is that user specific value. When the form page equals 1. So that's the only time that this container and all of the components within it is going to show. So we've set up the container, and now we're going to start adding elements into that container. So the first element is going to be a card collection. Okay. The source is going to be services. The style is going to be card. The title is going to be the service display name. Right? So we're going to say service display name. The description is going to be the service duration. The image is going to be the service image. We're going to set it to medium in size. You can make it smaller, but it kind of makes it too small in my opinion, but it's up to you. Then we're going to set the image style, square, image fill. We're going to make it 3x2. You can make it 16x9. It's, again, personal preference. And the orientation is going to be vertical. The options, we're not going to touch, but we are going to set some actions. And when the item click, when they click this item, instead of showing the detail screen, what we're going to do is we're going to set the column values in user profile, booking form, related. So we're going to set column values in the booking form, and the value that we're going to set is the service that they've selected. So the service they've selected, we're going to input the row ID of the service that they clicked. So when they click one of these icons, it's going to get the row ID and put it in the booking form under the service they've selected. And that's all we need to do, because you'll see what happens now. If I click this, it change. Remember we did that setup where if the service ID matches the row ID of the service, now we can clearly see which one they're selecting, or they can clearly see which one they're selecting. So that's the first component done. Then what we're going to do is add a choice component. Okay, so this is going to be a form element, and it's going to be a choice component. And here are the settings. We're going to write to the barber selected. The content source is going to be from the booking form, the barber options, right? Because some services only have one barber, some services are provided by many barbers, and this is what we're displaying, and we're only allowing them to pick a barber who provides that service. So we're going to say barber options. The value is going to be the row ID. Okay, so it's going to write the row ID to the selected barber. We can display the image of the barber, and we're going to display their name. So the design is going to be select a barber. We're going to make it chips. And because this isn't an actual form, this is just a detail screen, making it required or not doesn't actually change anything. So we don't need to touch that right now. And in the options, we can leave it blank and just get some hydration. Okay. So we've set this up, and basically now when they select a barber, it's going to add the ID of the barber to the selected barber. Then we're going to add another component here, and this is going to be a date component. Don't forget, it's not date and time, it's just the date component, and that's under form elements date. So the column we're going to write to is the booking date. The label is going to be select the date, and realistically we should only show today or later, so they can't book appointments in the past. So that's the settings in general. And there's one thing we want to do is we only want to display this component when they've selected a barber. So when barber selected is not empty, means it has a value, we're going to show this component. If I uncheck it, it disappears. Once I select the barber, it appears. So we're going to select a date, and we can select Saturday. And you'll notice, this is the brilliance of this booking system, right? You'll notice that the last appointment slot that pops up is 11 a.m. And this is because we set the end time on Saturday to 12. Okay? The basic cut, it was half an hour before. I changed it to 15 minutes for an example. The basic cut, the reason this is the last appointment at 11 is because it's 60 minutes. So it's going to finish when we close. If I selected basic cut, you can see now that we have 11:45 because the slot from 11:45 to 12 is available. This is only 15 minutes long. And whether or not there's a buffer, it doesn't matter because it's the last appointment. There's nothing after. So even if the buffer was 15 minutes, it doesn't matter because the appointment will finish appropriately. And so we can select a basic cut, but you can see here that even if we selected a time, we wouldn't be able to continue because Jimbo doesn't actually provide basic cuts. And so this is part of the validation that we'll get into. But we switch back to styled cut. Jimbo does provide this. We've selected the date. And so what we want to do is set up this choice component here. So this is another choice component. So it's from the form elements. And we're going to write to the time slot selected. Okay, so which time slot are they selecting? The source is going to be the options of the time slots, and these are the options that are matched with anything that was returned in that valid time slots code. So we're going to say options. The values is going to be the ID of the time slot. Okay. We don't need an image. We're going to display it as the time slot start. Okay, so time slot start. The label is going to be select the time. We're going to show it as chips. Again, it doesn't matter if it's required or not because it's not an actual form. There's no natural validation that's going to be applied. We have to do that ourselves. And in the options, we don't need to touch anything. So this is the choice component of the time slots. And what I'll do is I'll just show you that if I allow any date and I try and go back to, when was that appointment? Was it the 7th? You can see that we made an appointment at 9 a.m. on the 7th. That slot is now blocked out and the next available is 10 a.m. Even if it was a 15-minute cut, it's still 10 a.m. because that first one is taken. If I changed to Bob, who doesn't have an appointment at 9 a.m., Jimbo does, but Bob doesn't, now he can book from 9 a.m. So I've battle tested this. It's pretty bulletproof. I'm sure there's some scenarios where you can trick it into allowing a booking, but you'd have to try pretty hard. So we've set up all this. We've set up the choice components. Then what we want to do is basically we want to show a hint if there's no available slots, right? Because if I select Sunday when there are no available slots, we're going to see no availability on this date. So not only do we have validation, but we have feedback that we're providing to the customers. So this is just a hint component. Okay, this is under text, hint. And we're going to add it underneath the time slot choices. The description is going to be dynamic because that code returns different things depending on what the result is. So the description we're going to set as the validation valid slots, because if there's no valid slots, it won't return blank. It will return a string of text that we can use on the front end. So we select valid slots and the mood is going to be warning. And we're very upset with this. So we're going to do a smiley, a sad face, not a smiley face, a sad face. Now, what we're going to do is set some options, some visibility conditions so that it's not appearing all the time. It only appears when we want it to appear. So we're only going to show this component when valid slots or validation, valid slots is no availability on this date. This is the string of text that we specified we want to return if there's no slots. So we're going to set that up. No availability on that date. You can just type that in. And the booking date is not empty, right? Because if we didn't specify this, this is the default state. And so it would show it all the time. But we only want to show it if they've selected a date and it turns out there's no available slots. So that's all we need to do. We don't need to set any actions. And that's the hint. And then the last thing we're going to do is add a button. And this button is going to have many kind of validation checks. So we add a button, and this is just going to be the button here. And it's going to be basic, auto, on, show, align to the left. And in the options, we don't need to do anything because we're going to specify that the button is only clickable in certain conditions. So we're going to add the action, and the action itself is quite simple, right? We're just going to add a title and a little arrow, because I like the icon to be on the right. Let me just select the valid date and I'll show you what I mean. If you select the icon here, it's kind of, for me, it's on the wrong side. I don't know if it's just a preference thing. So I just add my own little icon. So that's all that is. And the action itself is going to be data, increment number. We're going to increment which row, this item. The column is going to be form page. So we're going to increment it from 1, which we set earlier, to 2. And we're going to increment by 1. Now, we only want this button to be clickable in very specific conditions. So we are only going to allow this action when they've selected a service, okay? And they've selected a barber. So barber selected is not empty. And they've selected a date. And the booking time slot start is not empty. So they've selected a time slot. And the time slot selected is included in validation valid slots. Now, the reason we do this, right? So time slots selected must be included in the valid time slots. The reason we do this is because you can kind of trick it, right? If we go to the 7th, okay, and I'm doing a styled cut for Bob at 9 a.m. If I switch to Jimbo, 9 a.m. is still selected, right? It's just not showing here. So the value in that column is still 9 a.m. So if we didn't have that condition, they'd be able to continue, but we don't want them to. We want them to basically go back to this step where they have to override it. So if we look on the data, the booking form, you can see that the time slot they've selected is 9 a.m. So technically it's still there and it's not empty, but we don't want to allow them to continue because that's Bob's timing. It's not Jimbo's. So we want them to reselect, and because we've selected Jimbo, when we select Jimbo, it changes the valid time slots. And if the previously selected time slot is not available, it's going to disable the ability to continue. But you can see 10 a.m. is available for Jimbo. It's also available for Bob. So that's fine. We can continue. It's only when it's not available and you switch, then it wipes it out. Okay? So that's that condition. And then there's one more condition. And we want to make sure that the barber they select can actually provide that service. Okay? Because if I go to, if I'm on Bob and I select a basic cut, Bob provides a basic cut. But if I'm on Jimbo and then I select basic cut, and even if they select the time, there shouldn't be the option to continue, right? The flow is top to bottom. So they select the service first, then the barber, and then etc. If they select a service, click a barber, right? And then come back and change the service, even if they select the time, they won't be able to continue. And so this is just another validation that only the barbers that can provide that actual service are being selected. So that's all we need to do for the first page of the booking form. So we've selected a service, we've got a barber, we've got a time, we've got a date, we've got a time. Then what we're going to do is press continue. And it's going to take us to the next page. That's just incremented the page number by 1. So now we're viewing 2. And this is where we're going to add another container. And before you do anything, you add the container and you want to make sure that this component is visible when the form page equals 2. So now you'll be able to see the component. And this is very simple. We're just going to add a text entry item. So we're going to add the client name. The label is going to be name. And we're going to kind of specify both in the placeholder and here that it's required. So they know that it's required. Because again, it's not an actual form. We're just kind of using a detail screen and turning it into our own version of a form. So we're going to add the text entry. We're going to add a phone entry. So we've got basically a phone number entry, and these are just form components. So we've got text entry, phone entry. The column that we're going to be editing is the client phone number, and these are all user specific, remember, so this is just for this individual person. The label, again, we just make it phone number required, and we don't need to set any options for any of these. Then we're going to add an email button. So the column is going to be the client email. The label is going to be email with a little asterisk, and it's going to be required. And then, so we've got 1, 2, 3, and I've made this text entry because if you make it email, as you're typing, it immediately says invalid, invalid, invalid. It kind of bugs me. So I've made it a text component, and in this case, it'll do. But you could theoretically select the email entry, but it's a little bit annoying because the display, it actually jumps. Anyway, you'll see what I mean if you try it. So then we're going to add a button block. The first button block is going to do a very simple thing. There's no options here. All it's going to do is it's going to be a basic button, width auto, accent off, label show. And we're just going to have a simple arrow. This is just a symbol, and it's a back arrow. And we're going to increment this item's page number by -1. So if the current page is 2 and we click this button, the page will be changed to 1, which will take us back to the previous screen. And we're only going to allow this when the client name is empty, or the phone number is empty, or the client email is empty. So these are just the client email, client phone number, and client name. Okay. And the reason we do this is because I want this to be subtle. I don't want it to stand out. And you'll see why that I have to add 2 button blocks to achieve this. Right, so we'll leave this like this. If I press back, beautiful. So let's continue. We've got another button block here. And essentially what we're going to do is you can duplicate this and then edit the settings. So we're going to do basic, auto, accent is going to be right, labels is going to be show. The first action is going to be the same as the previous button we set up, but we're going to change some of the validation. So we're only going to allow this when client name is not empty, and phone number is not empty, and email is not empty, which means we need everything to be filled out in order for this to show. And what this will do is when I'm adding here, you can see that email is empty. So this first button we set up is still going to show. As soon as I type something here, this button block is going to hide and the next button block is going to show. Okay. And this next button block is visible because all of these are set. And then we've got another button, which is the continue button. And we're going to basically set this up to be continue. We're going to increment the page by 1, and we're going to allow this action when the same as the other button. Client name is not empty, client phone number is not empty, and client email is not empty. Now, theoretically, you could actually set this from the options, but in this case, we're just going to do it from the actual buttons here. So we're incrementing by 1 with the continue button when all of these values are present. We're removing by 1 when all of these values are present. And the reason I had to do it like this is because if the continue button is not showing, let's just add a random. If the continue button is not showing, because we want to show an accent, it means that the back button is now highlighted as a button to click. And we don't actually want that because it almost looks like they've reached the end and the only way is back. So what we want to do is make sure that both are showing and that we've made the accent to the right, right? Because if there's only one button, it doesn't matter what you select here. If you've added an accent, that button will have it if there's only one. So we don't want that. So we've got 2 buttons, okay? And you can see here, this is only showing when the page equals 2. And so let's add some proper emails, and I can just say marco@.com. Okay. When we click continue, it's going to set it from 2 to 3 in terms of the page number. So we click continue, and now we're on the final form page before the thank you page. So what we want to do, add a container. Okay. First thing we're going to do is go to the options, and we're going to show this container when the form page equals 3. Okay. We're going to go back to general, make sure it's on full, and we don't need to set anything here. And all we're going to do here is add a little meta text. So we're going to add a text component, and the style is going to be meta text. The text is going to be booking summary. And we don't need any options for that. We're going to add some fields. Okay, so exactly the same as we had before on when they clicked on the event on the Barbers page. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 options. We're going to have the client name, phone number, client phone number, email, which is client email, the service, which is going to be the service name, duration will be service duration, barber will be barber name, the date will be the booking date, and the time will be the booking time. Pretty straightforward. Now, there's one last component that we're going to add in this container, and this is going to be a button block. Now, the action, the first action is going to be this back button, and we're going to allow this at any point. It doesn't matter, there's no condition, we're just going to allow it at any point, and we're going to increment the form page number by -1, so it takes us back to page 2, and if we click this, we go back to page 3. And then the last button is going to be a booking submit button. And so what we're going to do is have the booking submit button. The text is going to be confirm booking. The icon is going to be this nice little check icon. And before we set up this, I'm going to set up some actions, some validation, sorry. So we only allow this when the client name is not empty, the client phone number is not empty, and the client emails are not empty. In fact, I'm not sure if we actually need that because they will only be able to continue if it's not empty. So I believe we can actually remove this unless I'm breaking the functionality. We can remove that and we can just show it by default, because if I remove this, I can't continue anyway. So if I select this and then I continue, yeah, so that was unnecessary. So we've just got back with no validation or no conditions, and book with no conditions. But what we want to do is we want to create a new action, and we're going to call this one booking submit. So once you've done that and we edit this action, here's what you want to do. You want to increment the booking form page by 1. So we're going to increment, and to do that is just data increment. So that's the first step. We're going to increment this item form page by 1. Then we're going to show a notification, and it's going to say booking confirmed. So this is just interaction, show notification, and it's just cleared it, but I'll just booking confirmed. And the last one is going to be data add row. And what we're going to do here is take all of the values that were in the booking form and add them to the booking table as a new row. So the table that we're adding a row to is the bookings. So we're taking all the values from here and adding them as a row here. And the booking date, you just match the values, right? Booking date is the booking date. Client name is the client name. You do phone number, email. The barber ID is going to be the barber selected. The service ID is going to be the service selected. The service name is going to be the service name. Service duration will be service duration. And booking time slot start is going to be booking time slot start. So this is why naming conventions are also important, because for clarity's sake, you need to know which values you should be writing to which column. Okay, and that's all we're going to do for this particular action. So we can close this now. And when we confirm booking, right, it's going to increment the page number to 4. And this container is going to be visible when the page number equals 4. So let's add that last container. And again, in the settings, we're going to show this container when the form page equals 4. And here, what we can do is copy these fields, paste them into the container, and then we're going to add 3 text fields above it, or text components above it, because the fields is going to be the same. We don't need to change that. What we do need to change is the first text component that we add, right? The text is going to say booking confirmed, and this is only going to be visible to internal users. So when the component user profile row ID is not empty, then we're going to show that component. The next text field or text item is going to be, the text is going to be the form thank you title. Okay? And we're only going to show this thank you title when the ID is empty. So if it's an external person or a public user, then we want to show their name. But if we are a barber and we're adding a booking because someone called us, we don't want to see thank you Bob if that's not our name, or whatever it is, Robert. We just want to see that the booking was confirmed. And then below that, we do the same. This is just a text field and saying your booking has been confirmed. Okay, it's large. And we only want to show this when the row ID is empty. So internally, if you look here, as a barber or a manager, we're going to see booking confirmed. If it's a public user, they're going to say, thank you, Robert, your booking has been confirmed. That's all that's doing. Okay. And as far as the booking form is concerned, it's actually done, right? Because when we close this and we click to make a booking, it's going to reset those values. Remember, it's going to clear them out. So we can make another booking and we have no problem. Now, the last thing we need to do is basically add the calendar so we can see it internally. Okay. So what we're going to do is go to, I'll view it as admin. And now we can see everything again, and we can see those 2 bookings that were just made. So what we want to do is add a collection calendar, okay? And this is going to be visible when row ID is not empty. So because we're signed in, we have a row ID, so we're going to show this. Everyone else is not going to be able to see it. And we're going to group by the ID of the barber. So we can just separate the colors. You can see this is for Jimbo and this is for Bob. Okay. In the actions, we'll configure that in a second, but I'm actually going to go to general and just show you what to set up. So you would need to actually, before you jump into grouping, you would need to make sure that the source is bookings. All right. The title is add a booking. The items data, we're going to show the barber's name as the title. Calendar start is going to be the start time. Calendar end is going to be the end time. Default mode is week because we want to see a clear view of the week. And then in the options, you want to make sure that you are grouping by the barber's ID. Now, the only thing we need to do now is in the actions, we're going to add a title bar action. And this is going to be the same as that other button, right? We're going to select the same action because regardless of whether we're public or private or signed in, we want to be able to see the booking form. So when we click this, the same form pops up. And I'll just place another booking. Let's select Bob. Let's select the 7th again. And you can see 9 to 10 is blocked, but we can book 10 a.m. This is going to be for Simon. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's going to be simon@me.com. Continue. Confirm booking. Booking confirmed. You see now that we're signed in, we see booking confirmed instead of thank you, Simon, because it wasn't Simon that made the booking. It was someone internally. And you can see now very nicely that Bob has 2 bookings on this day. And so in terms of actually the actions, that's all we need to do. For item click, we need to show the details screen for this item. And what we need to do is show the detail screen. And when we click it, we're going to do the same thing as we had for the Barbers page. So in fact, what you can do to save a bit of time is go to the Barbers page, go to someone that has a booking, copy this container, because this is just looking up the bookings table. So you copy the container, go back to bookings, you go here, you paste it, and since they're both from the bookings table, it's both going to be automatically synced. And then all you need to do, we can delete this. Then all you need to do, actually, you don't need to do anything else. That's it. Maybe you just set the details as the booking start, so you can see that's that up there. And to my knowledge, that is actually everything done, right? So we're complete. Congratulations. All right, so we have the bookings page, we have the Barbers page, we have the settings page, we have all of the different settings that we can do here. We have all of the barber settings. We can delete a barber. We can edit their time slots. We can edit what services they provide. We can mark them as available or not available. So you can see here, if I mark them both as unavailable and I try and make a booking, nothing's available. And it's the same as if I was external. If I try and make a booking, no one's available. Okay. So we go back to the admin and we just make sure that it's all working correctly. We can add these. We can come in I'm just kind of flying around now, just changing settings. You can see all of this. So to my knowledge, the app is actually complete. And there's one thing that I want to show you, that is, I don't actually like how much space is above and below the kind of standard times of a day. Like, I don't want to see what's at 1 a.m. So in the settings, if you have access to custom CSS, you can add this code, okay? And then when you click preview, it just really tidies it up quite nicely. So this code will be available to people in Loqode school. And I highly suggest you join, because this is the sort of stuff that we do. And this is the stuff that I love teaching. So that's the appearance. You can edit the name and the icon and stuff. For privacy, this is the last thing I'll show you. For privacy, you want to make it public, optional sign-in, only users in the table. So this means that barbers can sign in, or managers can sign in, and they'll be able to, you know, add their own bookings, change their times, do whatever. But only users in the table can sign in. So if a person from the public tries to click the sign in button and they try log in, nothing's going to happen. So that's it. Congratulations on getting through that. That was quite a big one. It's quite complex. There's a lot of moving parts, but once you figure it out, let's do a styled cut with Jimbo on the 7th. You can see his bookings from 9 till 10. The next time is 10 a.m. What we can do is actually just quickly show you that if I increase the buffer to 15 minutes, technically the next booking for Jimbo should only be at 10:15 on the 7th. There we go. So it works like butter. It's really nice and smooth. Let's add this booking, and we can call this booking buffered. We can add the phone number. We can add buff@me.com. Continue, place the booking, and now we've got a gap of 15 minutes between these bookings. And yeah, the only other thing, maybe you add the titles. So bookings, and this can be bookings. Barbers can be barbers and barbers. But that's it. Done. Beautiful. Right?